Well, welcome back to the Communication Mastery Podcast with me, Mark Burlinson. This is episode 13 that concludes season 2. We've had a great season together, haven't we? And I'm glad you've stuck with me for the whole of this season. If you missed any earlier on, go back and take a listen. Let me summarize the season for you, because we've covered a lot of ground with a lot of wonderful guests as well. We started out in episode 1 with talking about communication being the fuel for connection. And that's the crucial reason why we have this podcast, is to help us connect better with the people around us. Then in episode 2, we spoke with Stephanie Sebring-Wilson and how she connects with youth and the communication skills that she employs. Then we talked about communication forensics in episode 3, how we defuse miscommunication, how we get to the bottom of why things aren't working as well as they could. And then in episode 4, we had Jeff Williamson talking about communication in leadership. That was a really fun discussion with Jeff, because I remember there was that whole lesson about what he'd learned through wrestling. And if you missed that one, go back and take a listen. Episode 5, we talked about how businesses benefit from communication coaching. Lots of different wisdom in that one. And then in episode 6, we had the amazing Tom Winslow talking about communication from a lawyer's perspective. And episode 7, we talked about moving from communication basics toward communication mastery, which of course is our purpose as a podcast. We all want to get better at communication. And I hope that these episodes have been helping you to take some more steps along that journey. I really enjoyed episode 8 when we had Tim Vicek and Colden Blades on the podcast. The three-way conversation we had there, all about authenticity and integrity and adaptability, was really well worth the time we spent. I learned a lot from that. I think they did too. And then episode 9, we talked about acceptance and adaptation in practice, picking up on what we talked about, the three of us, in the previous episode. We looked at how can I grow my adaptation skills? How can I improve my acceptance of others who are different from me? And there was a lot of input in that episode. Episode 10 was a replay of my interview with Nick and Meredith at the Better Business Bureau, where we covered all kinds of aspects of communication. We had a good time with them there in Raleigh, and I was glad to share that one with you as well. And then in episode 11, we talked about strategies for becoming more multilingual. Remember, you have all 7 communication styles in your profile, just as everyone else around you does. It's simply the mix that's different. And so understanding all 7 languages is a vital part of growing in communication mastery. And then last episode, episode 12, we had the amazing Gina Trimarco in the studio with us, and we talked about improv and talked about coaching, and we talked about communication in relationships. She's really funny, and if you've missed that episode, I'd really encourage you to go back and take a listen. We had a great time with Gina. So that brings us to today, which is the end of season 2. Season 3 is in development, and so watch out for more news on season 3 as we go into the fall. By the way, if you're not already signed up for my newsletter, go to markburlinson.com and click the newsletter sign up button so that you get the news straight away once we begin the release process for season 3. And today what I want to do to finish up the series is to talk a little bit about my journey in communication, particularly as it relates to the life languages, because that's the foundation of what I do. But I'd like you to compare, how does this match up, or maybe it differs from the journey that you've been on in communication. Maybe you discovered this podcast and that's as far as you've gone. Maybe you're a previous client of mine and now you're listening to keep up to date with your life languages understanding. Whatever your place in the journey, maybe you'll learn something from my journey. As with many of you, my introduction to the life languages was work-related. I was asked to take the profile, and as a leadership team, we reviewed the results together with a coach, with a consultant. And the insights we gained from that were really remarkable, very helpful. And yet at the same time, I made a big mistake at that time, and I saw myself purely through the lens of my primary language. And I saw my colleagues through the lens of their primary language. And so I made that mistake that we've talked about on the podcast before, of putting people into boxes rather than learning to build bridges. And so the impact for me was limited. And as a result, I also lost my focus on the life languages, which meant that for probably 4 or 5 years, I wasn't benefiting from the investment I'd made in that program, in that profile. And as a result, my relationships with my colleagues on the leadership team could have been a lot better in that season. Then there was a change of job for me, and I became a team leader in a different setting. And that's where we use the life languages to help the team to grow coherence. Because when I stepped into that team leader role, the team needed to be drawn together. And so by having a focus on communication, having a focus on the differences between us and understanding each other better, we were able to develop team coherence in that new setting. And that was a very profitable thing to do. So it renewed my interest in the profile, but also in the process of learning all 7 communication styles. And there was a lot of leadership development that took place as a result of that as well. And then that team leadership role eventually came to an end, and that was partly because there was a failure in the senior leadership to value the differences between people and to leverage those differences into strengths, what we talk about a great deal on the podcast here. And I learned through that journey that self-awareness is just as vital when things are not going well as it is when things are working. And so in the good times, it's good to be self-aware, but also in the tough times, self-awareness can really help. And on my own journey, I guess I went through a kind of season of professional drought after that, where I felt like I wasn't really a fit with the organization I was part of. I wasn't a good fit with the leadership there. And there also wasn't a willingness to look at communication issues in the way that would have helped us to resolve some of those differences. There was a climate of hesitation to learn about other people's differences. It was more of a, you all need to be the same, we all need to look like me kind of attitude. And that really wasn't healthy, but it also wasn't fruitful. And that organization suffered as a result. And of course, I had a hard journey through that, as you can imagine. I'm grateful for it, though, because at the end of that journey, I had the opportunity for a fresh start. And my wife and I took our profiles again. This will be the 3rd time now. And that's how I recognize the value of understanding others much more deeply, as well as making sure you take into consideration all 7 communication styles as you interact with other people. I've told you before on the podcast, I learned a lesson at that moment when we took our profiles again, as we were participating in a workshop to understand the life languages more deeply. I suddenly realized I'd been asking my wife the wrong question for many years. I would ask her, what do you think about difficult decisions or big challenges? And she could never really tell me what she thought. And I realized that, as we've talked about before, her first 2 languages were not thinking languages at all. They were feeling languages. So I simply changed the question. And I would ask her, how do you feel about this? Or what do you feel about that? And immediately, because it was her familiar communication style, she could give me answers. And that made a huge difference to our relationship moving forward. And I was still able to apply that in the work settings I was in now, but also in the social settings of understanding what other people need from me. Remember, I asked the right question, or changed the question. But also how I could adapt myself to be more accessible to those around me. It didn't change who I am on the inside, but the way I offered my interaction to other people was different in those different settings. And it really helped a great deal. And this is about the same time when I began to train as a coach for the life languages. And so I started this business, I guess, probably 7 years ago now. And it's been a journey of discovery, a journey that continues even to this day. And I'm still learning about communication, which is why I love to pass on my understandings to you. And I love how Life Languages has really continued to develop and to deepen the body of knowledge around communication styles. And I've lost count of how many folks I've helped over those years. It's been loads and loads of people in different settings. I've worked a lot with business teams. I've told you some of those stories in the past, but especially small and medium-sized businesses. I love to see the difference this can make in the kind of businesses that typically wouldn't consider themselves to be developing soft skills or reaching out to be able to train their people in the kinds of ways that would make a huge difference if they could afford it or if they had the time. In a short time and with relatively little outlay, I can make a big difference in a small business setting because they can understand each other as well as adapt to their customers. And so we see reduced conflict in teams. We see increased appreciation for each other's communication styles and each other's contributions. We see stronger teams because they begin to understand which languages to emphasize in different settings and with different challenges. There are stronger customer service and stronger sales results because people can adapt to the different customers who are before them and the different challenges they face day by day. And there's also a natural leadership development component to this. Because you're developing character by learning to adapt to other people and learning to understand other people in a deeper way, you can cultivate each person's natural uniqueness and then become a greater and more effective leader as a result. So that's some of the work I've done with small businesses, but I love nonprofits as well. And they're a particular passion of mine because they do so much good with such tight budgets and so many pressures on them. And there is so much need in our world today, isn't there? So I love to help nonprofits who, again, seldom invest in communication skills, even though those would be fundamental to their mission and to their vision. And some of the nonprofits I've been able to work with have seen some really remarkable results and many of the same benefits as I talked about just now with small business. But also the additional bonus of a deeper cohesion in their small teams. Because often in a nonprofit, you've only got a handful of people trying to do everything. And so to have cohesion rather than friction in a team is a great gift when you're in that kind of pressurized but low budget, enthusiastic but overstretched kind of setting. And there's also a deeper connection with stakeholders, whether those are the clients they're serving or whether those are their supporters and the people around their mission who are looking on and seeing the organization's progress. I remember there was one operations manager in a nonprofit that I worked with earlier this year he made this comment. I wrote it down. Mark's coaching through the life languages has been transformative in my personal and professional life. That really gladdens my heart because now we've got a guy who's being much more effective because of his understanding. And it didn't take long for him to gain it. And we're still in touch. He loves to contact me from time to time just to keep fresh in his application of what he understands and to continue deepening his learning. It really is a journey, isn't it? And this has been my life language journey that I'm outlining for you. Another step on that journey has been working with couples. I love to work with couples because of the story I told you about my wife and I. Often couples have significant differences in their preferred communication styles. And because this tool's been so helpful to Jane and me, I love to see a difference that it can make for other people. I think of one couple whose primary communication styles were very similar, and I helped them to not get stuck in just one or two languages, but to broaden their profiles were different once they got past the first two in their profile, but that because they were so similar in the first two, they tended to stay there, maybe to overthink things, maybe to be hesitant to reach out to others, maybe to spend so much time in the thinking process that they never allowed themselves to move over into action or into emotion that would have given them the fruit of being able to connect more deeply with others around them. And that the couple that I'm referring to, I spoke with them a few weeks back, and they said that their friend circle has become so much more rich for them. They're still the same people. They haven't changed internally, but the way they interact with other people. Because they're so thoughtful, they think it all through. And they adapt in different settings to be able to connect more effectively with their friends around them. That's very rewarding to see that. There's also individuals who come to me. I can think of many over the 7 years I've been doing this now, whether it's high school students or business owners. In some cases, I work with consultants and people who are meeting different people every day. And they come for help with expressing themselves, but also in connecting with the others around them. And I love to use their profile to help them see the full range of what they have to offer, because very often there's things that they've overlooked. Again, it's the mistake I made at the beginning of my journey to think, well, I'm just this one thing, and that's only a part of the picture, and everybody else who's different, I'm going to struggle to connect with. But in reality, I speak all 7 languages at least every week, if not every day. And being able to adapt into the different areas, into the different styles, is a great value to many people. So that's been my journey, and I wonder, what has your journey looked like? Maybe you're just beginning in your understanding of your communication styles. I'd encourage you to take another step. Maybe if you haven't done your profile, take your profile. Or if your profile is maybe more than a couple of years old, update it. I was working with some people just in the gap between the last episode and this one who updated their profiles and were quite surprised at some of the changes they saw, but it gave them insight into both the journey they've been on and also into how they can face challenges that are ahead of them with a different blend of life languages, of communication styles to approach those challenges with. So here are some thoughts as we draw season 2 to a close. And remember, sign up for the newsletter if you're not already signed up at markburlinson.com, my website, so that you can stay informed for next season. To wrap out this season, first thing I wanted to stress to you is that your profile is unique to you. And until you take it or you update it, or if you haven't read it recently, pull it out and take another look, because it's unique, a unique picture of how you're wired, and you're missing vital insights into yourself, that self-awareness that's the beginning of all communication and all connection. It's the foundation of every relationship, whether it's at work or at home or in the community. Your self-awareness is vital, and so I encourage you to go back to your profile, recognize it's unique, and draw out of it all that you can that will help you in the journey that you're on. The second observation or second thought that came to me as I was preparing this was that your profile describes you, but it doesn't define or limit you. So when you look at all 7 of the languages, as you relate to people around you, look for those who are different. Learn all that you can about others whose first language is different from yours, or maybe someone who's strong in one of your weaker languages, so that you can grow your understanding, grow your awareness. If you haven't already bought the quick reference guide to all of the life languages, I'd encourage you to do that. Or if you've been to one of my workshops, you've got a workshop workbook that you can refer back to that gives you a lot of the detail of each language. Make sure you don't mix the languages up, because each is unique. And just the same as if you go into, well, my wife and I went to Europe for a trip just a couple of weeks ago. And if you speak French in Germany, people will understand you, but not as well as if you speak German. Or if you speak Italian in England, very few people will understand you. You need to speak the right language in the right way. And all of us who've learned other languages will remember the challenge of mixing up the languages. So we speak Spanglish, for example, or where you get the confusion of not knowing which language you're speaking. So keep the languages separate and grow your fluency in all of 7 of those languages. And then the third thing that I wanted to highlight is that you don't know what you don't know. Again and again with clients, I find this. They're like, oh, I hadn't realized that, or I hadn't seen that, or yeah, that's a really helpful observation. And so that's why I enjoy taking this journey with you. Hopefully each time we have an episode together, you're learning something fresh. You're seeing something that you didn't know before. So remember, you don't know what you don't know. And if I can help you further on that journey, then thought number 4 is, well, what are your next steps from here? We've come to the end of season 2, and I've talked about my journey. Your journey continues just as mine does. I'm constantly learning more about communication. What next step can you take to learn more? And how can I help you? You can email me, mark@markburlinson.com, and let me know, how can I be of help to you in your journey to communication mastery? I'd love to be a journeyman with you as you're journeying with us into communication. And remember the Communication Mastery community. It's a private group that I lead, and I'm upgrading it into the fall to a much higher level, where there will be extensive archives for you to search, but also real-time responses from me. And so as a result of that upgrade, the subscription price is actually going to go up. So if you want to catch a good deal, you can jump over to my website before the fall and subscribe at today's rate, and you'll be grandfathered in at least for the first 6 to 9 months of that upgraded community. where you can get answers easily and quickly without having to have a whole hour of coaching. If you want a whole hour of coaching, of course, or a package of several hours of coaching, happy to talk to you about that as well. But in the meantime, keep listening, keep referring friends, and if you could write a review for this podcast, that would be really valuable to me. And I think that others can benefit too as they see the value of what we're doing together here. So thanks for being with me for season 2. Keep your eyes open for season 3 coming later this year. And we'll see you again very soon.